Welcome to this explainer. We're diving straight into a really fascinating and honestly kind of terrifying compounding mechanical failure on the Boeing 737 MAX. This is a critical sequence of events that has the NTSB urgently calling for some major systemic training updates and software overhauls. So let's just get right into the mechanics of what went wrong and how we fix it.
We've got a lot of ground to cover today. We're going to track this entire incident step by step, starting from the initial mechanical trigger deep inside the engine, all the way to the intense, split-second human response required in the cockpit. And finally, we'll look at the engineering and regulatory solutions coming down the pipeline. To really understand this, we need to wind the clock back to December of 2023, specifically looking at a Southwest Airlines 737 MAX 8 flight that had just taken off from Louisville.
It's honestly wild how a completely common external event can cascade into such a complex system failure. Here's exactly how the dominoes fell. A bird was ingested into the aircraft's left engine. Boom! That impact caused a fan separation, which is violent, sudden damage. That damage immediately triggered an internal safety mechanism, which we'll talk about in a second. But here's the catch. Activating that safety mechanism inadvertently dumped engine oil directly onto incredibly hot engine components. And you know what happens when oil hits extreme heat. Instantaneous, thick smoke right inside the engine casing.
Now, you might be wondering about that safety mechanism. It's called a load reduction device, or LRD, and the truly crazy part is it actually functioned exactly like it was supposed to. These CFM LEAP 1B turbofans use LRDs to purposely separate the fan blades from the surrounding structure if there's severe damage. Why? Because a heavily damaged spinning fan creates a massive imbalance that could literally tear the engine right off the wing. So the LRD prevents a catastrophic structural failure. Absolutely crucial. But in doing its job, it created a highly hazardous secondary effect by releasing all that oil.
Okay, so we've got smoke inside the engine, but as risk analysts, the really vital question we have to answer is, how on earth did that smoke penetrate the inside of the aircraft so unbelievably fast? The answer lies in the plane's environmental control system, which is split right down the middle. The left side engine feeds air directly to the flight deck, the cockpit. The right side system, on the other hand, supplies the passenger cabin. Because this specific bird strike happened on the left engine, the moment that LRD activated and created smoke, the system pumped those fumes directly into the confined space of the cockpit. It turned an engine problem into a direct, immediate threat to the pilot's lives in seconds.
Which brings us to the human element. Let's step away from the machinery for a minute and talk about the extreme pressure these crews face when everything goes wrong all at once. Put yourself in that left seat for a second. You've just lifted off, you're climbing out, and suddenly there's an engine issue. Almost instantly, thick, acrid smoke violently fills your tiny workspace. The flight crew reported that visibility dropped to absolute zero in a matter of seconds. They literally could not see their flight instruments, let alone their emergency checklists.
So what do? You are dealing with a massive adrenaline spike and total surprise. Pilots have to radically compartmentalize that stress and rely entirely on muscle memory. First things first, donning the oxygen masks. Sounds simple, right? But try doing it while essentially blindfolded by smoke, struggling to get a tight seal over your face just so you can breathe. Completely unable to read their instruments, they worked through the emergency checklists purely by memory and touch, declared the emergency, and somehow, incredibly, landed the aircraft safely. The NTSB explicitly called out the intense toll this took on the crew. The pilots themselves said this real-world, chaotic experience was far more challenging than anything they'd ever seen in a simulator. And this exposes a huge, glaring gap. Current simulator training for smoke conditions is just fundamentally insufficient. We're training pilots for a sanitized version of an emergency when the reality is totally blinding and disorienting.
And here's where it gets really concerning. This December event, it wasn't just a one-off freak accident. We're looking at a compounding systemic risk.
Just a few months earlier, in March of 2023, there was a nearly identical LRD failure after a bird strike, but because that one hit the right side engine, it filled the passenger cabin with smoke instead of the cockpit. Then December happens and the left side strike hits the flight deck. That is a clear, undeniable pattern of danger baked into this engine design when it hits a bird, which is exactly why the NTSB issued such urgent recommendations in May of 2026.
Think about how much worse this could have been. Investigators brought up a truly chilling hypothetical. What if this sudden, total loss of visibility happened during a night flight? Or in really complex weather, like flying through a heavy storm where you have zero visual reference to the horizon outside? Losing your instruments to smoke when it is pitch black outside leaves a pilot with almost zero spatial awareness. It could have easily been catastrophic.
So, knowing all that, how do we actually fix this? Let's take a look at the engineering and regulatory solutions that are actively underway to mitigate this risk.
To tackle the root cause, Boeing and CFM are rolling out a software update. It's actually fascinating. They're using a digital fix to solve a physical plumbing issue. This update modifies the engine's software so that the absolute millisecond an LRD activates, the engine's control valves automatically slam shut. By isolating that airflow immediately, it's designed to stop those burning oil fumes before they ever get a chance to enter the aircraft's air system.
And we're not going to be waiting around forever for this either. According to a recent report from the DOT's Office of the Inspector General, the FAA is fully expected to formally mandate this specific software installation across the entire fleet by the third quarter of this year.
But here's the catch. A software patch is great, but it doesn't fix the human factor. It doesn't change the glaring fact that current U.S. regulations still don't require pilots to run through realistic, zero-visibility cockpit smoke simulations.
Changing this requires a massive, coordinated push from everyone involved. You've got the NTSB heavily pressuring the FAA to finally mandate realistic, scenario-based training for these smoke events. The FAA is evaluating those recommendations and has already told airlines to review their procedures. At the same time, trade groups like Airlines for America and the Regional Airline Association are doing the vital work of pushing this safety data and the NTSB's findings directly out to their airline members so crews are at least aware of the danger right now.
So as we wait for this software update to roll out across the fleet, and while the regulators debate simulation requirements, it leaves us with one really provocative, critical question. If a bird strike happens tonight, are our pilots actually trained for the unexpected in the dark? We're patching the hardware, absolutely, but fortifying that human line of defense is still a huge, ongoing challenge. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. If you found this breakdown valuable, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel, Air Flight Space. We're going to keep bringing you these objective, structured deep dives into aviation mechanics, safety, and all the incredible systems that keep us flying safely. Keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next one.